Good day, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Jay, and this is Homeschool Your Kids podcast. Today we have with us Shamile. Shamile, introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Shamile Childs. I am the founder and literacy specialist of Reading Pro Virtual Learning, and I'm super excited to be here with you all today.
Oh, nice. Well, thank you for joining us. Take us through the journey to getting to Reading Pro Virtual Learning. How did we get here?
Absolutely. So I started education as a substitute teacher at my elementary school, Betty Shabazz International Charter School in Chicago, Illinois. And so I had just graduated college. I just had my first baby, and I went home to show one of my mentors, who was from Betty Shabazz. She was a teacher and then assistant principal. Her name was Mama Makita Keparu. She was my mentor, and she said, "Hey, I have some roles available. If you're interested in being a substitute teacher, let me know." And so,
Homeschool families. Homeschool Your Kids Expo and Homeschool Beats Academy are teaming up to bring you a day of real support and real inspiration. Come explore curriculum and enrichment, meet trusted vendors, and connect with the homeschool community. And at our featured Expo stop, meet Homeschool Beats Academy and see how students ages 7 to 18 can create original music through beat making and production with parent-friendly guidance. Get dates and details at homeschoolyokidsexpo.com.
My schedule was not working out with what I was currently doing with my background in criminal justice. And so I was like, well, let me try out substitute teaching. I absolutely loved it. And so after 1 year of substituting, I applied to Teach for America. And I was accepted into Teach for America to the 2014 core for Northeast Ohio. And so with me being a military spouse, it worked out, right? So every time my husband would relocate, I would be able to just apply for another job as a teacher. And so I started my career in Northeast Ohio as a first year teacher, and I sucked. And so if anyone know about Teach for America, typically you have non-traditional education students, and then they give them this 6-week course that's supposed to help them be these great teachers. And unfortunately, that just was not the case for me. And so I remember my first year as a teacher, and I had a coach, but my coach did not help me in the way that I needed her to help me. And so I remember thinking man, one day I want to be able to help teachers so that our kiddos are learning. And so, because I ultimately felt like I was failing my kids. And so the next year I applied for my educational leadership degree, my master's degree. And so we ended up moving to Florida. I received my degree in educational leadership, and then I continued my journey as a teacher. And so in 2 years, 7, I became an instructional coach. I started off as an instructional coach for the Center for Black Educators in Philadelphia. Sharif El-Mekki, he is the CEO of the Center for Black Educators. And so after having the opportunity to coach and just loving it so I was a coach for Freedom Schools for the Center for Black Education Development. And I loved it. And I was like, yes, I'm on the right track. And my goal was I can coach teachers. It would be great. And student achievement would increase. So then I finally landed my first role as an assistant principal. And wow. It was not what I thought it would be, right? You have a lot of pushback, you have a lot of ideas, as an assistant principal, you don't make any decisions. And so, you have people telling you what they think is the best thing to do. And ultimately you're looking at data, right? And for me, it was always my mentors was always telling me look at the data speaks for itself. You can have all the greatest ideas, but if the needle isn't moving, then we need to go to a new intervention. And so after having been 3 years as an assistant principal and seeing so many things that was just going wrong and still feeling I've made a difference for some, but not enough, I was I want to step away from traditional education and start Reading Pro Virtual Learning. And so with Reading Pro Virtual Learning, our goal is to support families across the country and teaching their students their children how to become proficient readers. And here we are today.
Oh, that's beautiful. So because you took a journey, girl, and I started out subbing too. And I love subbing. And it was so much different than, being in your own classroom. But what do you feel as a first, because you said, okay, so I'm not familiar with Teach for America. I've heard of it, but I've never really spoke to anyone that's going through it and, has worked for them. So it's kind of like a career switcher program. It sounds
correct.
Like.
Yes.
Okay. So you'd say you do a 6-week course and then they send you out there.
Yes. And so there's for 2 years. So you stay in the course for 2 years, and there's ongoing professional development. And so, like I said, I was with Northeast Ohio, and again, like the professional development, it would be like, strategies for teaching your kiddos, resources for teaching your kiddos. But for me, I just did not I needed the foundation of what does good instruction look like? And the truth of the matter is, unfortunately, just a lot of school building leaders in general and coaches just do not know. They do not have the formula for what great instruction looks like. And until you, like I said, you can have all the best ideas, but until you are able to create your plan and put it in action and see how the data moves, then it's just an idea. And like I said, I've been successful as a classroom teacher, with mentorship, and I've been even successful with coaching other teachers. But at a building level, because again, as the assistant principal, your job is to assist the principal. So I was unable to make the success that I was hoping to make. And again, I was like, I know what good instruction looks like, and there were just too many barriers, you know what I mean? And so to answer your question, they don't just push you off, but it's ongoing. But I think having the foundation for me is what I needed in order to be able to move the needle. And so I was unable to do that my first few years.
Gotcha. But that led you to go back to get your master's in education. So you was like, all right, this ain't working. Let me go research some more. And so you got your master's, and then you entered into the assistant principal position.
Yes. So I got my master's, and the truth of the matter is, I worked really, really hard as a teacher, right? Because I knew, in order for you to even be considered as an assistant principal, they want to know that you can move the needle in the classroom, right? And so I remember just working really hard and just trying different methods to get my kiddos to grow in reading and math. And so I spent the bulk of my years as a teacher as an early elementary teacher. So teaching first grade. I taught kindergarten through third grade small group interventions. And then I taught first grade a few years. I taught fifth grade. I taught a year of fourth grade. So I spent the bulk of my teaching years in elementary education. And so
Homeschool families, are you ready to refresh your plans for the year? Join us at the Homeschool Your Kids Expo. Meet curriculum and enrichment vendors, discover new programs, and connect with a community that gets it, all in one place. Come with questions, leave with real options. Get event details and register now at homeschoolyourkidsexpo.com. That's homeschoolyourkidsexpo.com.
Once I got my degree as a master's in education, then I couldn't just get a job. It's just not like they're going to give you a job, right? So I transitioned to coaching. And in coaching, that is where I learned about the science of reading. And so with me having what actually happened was I was interviewing for a position, and another young lady that I coached was like, I interviewed for it. They didn't get it, but they're heavy on the science of reading. And I was like, the science of reading? I've never heard of that. So mind you, this is after I've already been teaching for years and just busting my butt trying to get these kids how to read, figuring out why is this working for some but not for others. And so I applied. I applied for the job, and they told me that I would have an interview coming up. And so that whole weekend, like, I studied as much as I could about the science of reading. And so that was so. It gave me enough information, and there's a lot of information on YouTube. Like, if you would have thought that I was taking a class or something, a crash course, but that's literally what I did. Because for days on end, I was just looking up as much as I can to learn about what is this science of reading. And so, basically, once I applied for the job, I was accepted. And this job was called Children's Literacy Initiative. They have different, they have different, I guess you would say, branches. So they're located in Philadelphia, but they have them in Chicago. The organization is in Florida. They have like different regions. So, but I was in Philadelphia. And so I started as a subcontractor coach for the Philadelphia School District. And I remember we had this curriculum. And so my job was to go in and coach these teachers, but we needed to use this curriculum that aligned with the science of reading. And that was when I really, truly understood, okay, this is how kids learn how to read. And so the science of reading tells you that there has to be like everything should work together. So like you have your phonemic awareness, phonological awareness, your phonics, your comprehension, your vocabulary. And so all of those things should be interwoven in a way that is systematic and that it builds rigorously over time. And so once I figured out, like, okay, this is what the science of reading is saying we have to do. Here is a curriculum. And then I was able to actually coach teachers and show them like how to use the curriculum. And I was able to get the numbers. Then I was successful and then was able to move on into an assistant principal role. So it took some time. I know oftentimes people think, oh, if you just go to school and you get your degree, as an administrator, you'll go right into the role. But for me, that was not the case. And oftentimes those who look like me, have to work extra hard to get put in those positions, even when our data says that we're more than capable.
Indeed. So you spent a lot of time on the elementary level, like
Correct.
You were with the babies, the foundation. Yeah. So, okay. And when you were assistant principal, you were at elementary school?
Yes, so I was an assistant principal for intermediate 3 through 5, then an assistant principal for 6 through 8. It was not my favorite. The middle school kiddos, you have to have a certain, like, it takes a certain special type of person to,
That's how I feel about elementary school too. That's so funny. Because, I taught at the middle school and high school level. So I feel that way about elementary school too. I feel like that takes a totally different, I always call them angels that came and decided to float on down from heaven and be like, you know what? I'll go in elementary. Because that's different.
That is so funny. That's so funny. And see, I've substituted at the elementary, the middle school, and the high school level. And I always said I would never, ever, ever, serve in middle school. I'm not sure what I was thinking, but it was a whole different other beast.
It is. 7th grade is that I feel like that's the most pivotal year for young people. From my experience, I just saw so much go down in 7th grade as far as the transition to 8th grade, from that 6th to that 8th grade. That 7th grade year is just that, like, they're going through things, hormonal changes and all that good stuff. So it's different, but I still say elementary though, girl. Like, I subbed for 8 years, okay? I was a substitute teacher for 8 years, and I can count on one hand how many times I subbed in elementary school because that was not the move for me. Having all them little people and talking about who hurt their feelings and like they're sad about this and need your help with. I was like, oh, y'all too needy here. This is a lot.
Oh yes, for sure. Yes, for sure. Me and one of my good girlfriends, she's also a principal. We always say, if you're not performing, you're not teaching. And when you're teaching elementary kiddos, you have to be performing and know your content. So it is a lot, but if you're, I'm animated, so it works for me. I have a lot of fun with it, but no, you need a lot of energy because when you're done, Yeah. By the time the end of the day is there, the end of the day has arrived. You're ready to crash. Yes.
Girl. So, okay, how did you get, okay, so I know you went to the interview for the coaching position with the science of reading, and you drilled in from, from your weekend of diving in. So what set you on a literacy path is because you knew they were interested in the science of reading, or were you already like, because of your experience in the classroom, you felt like literacy was a way to go?
No. So initially it was becoming a literacy coach and seeing just like how many of our kiddos were not learning how to read, going into classrooms and trying to coach teachers. Some like those first through third year teachers, they're more susceptible to coaching. The ones after that third year, not so much. And looking at their data,
you're like, tell me nothing.
Yeah, they like, no, you just trying to tell me what to do. And when the last time you've been in the classroom? Like just last year. And I'm only telling you strategies that I know, you know what I mean? That I know worked, what I know moved the needle. Mm-hmm. And so it was difficult to see, like kiddos are struggling to read. And oftentimes you will hear the kiddos being blamed for it. Like, these kids. You're like, whoa, what do you mean these kids? You know what I mean? And it's like, no, what the issue is, good pedagogy is not happening. The issue is you are not an expert in your content and you won't allow me to coach you. And so again, so that set and then when I was able to coach those teachers who did allow me to coach them, and seeing like how we were teaching them how to code words. So I would never forget, it was a little girl and I was doing an observation. And as I'm doing an observation, I'm walking around looking at the kids, seeing like what they are doing. And a girl raised her hand, a young lady, she's a first grader, and she says, I don't know this word. And I said, okay, remember, you have to code the word. So then she codes the word. And so she put like which letters are a consonant, which letters are a vowel. I was like, all right, do you see any patterns? And she was like, yes, I see C, V, V, C. I was like, okay, what do you do now? So then she took a syllable divider line and she divided the word into a syllable. And I watched her sound out that word, and she said it, and it sent chills through my body. And that's when I knew that the science of reading worked. Like, if you teach kids explicitly and systematically how to read, they need to learn phonics. They can't look at a page and guess and say, oh, there's a house on this page. This word is house. Because It could be home. It could, in fact, be home.
It definitely be home. Yes.
Your kid has music in them. They just need the right tools to let it out. Homeschool Beats Academy teaches kids ages 7 to 18 how to make real beats at home on their schedule, in their own style. No experience needed. Grab the complete First Beat Kit free at homebeatsacademy.com. That's homeschoolbeatsacademy.com.
And so for the first time, I realized like, nope. And then to learn that 80% of words can be decoded, which means that if you teach these phonics patterns, that kiddos can actually learn these words, even high frequency words. Like, we hear people say, oh, like high frequency words, these are words, or sight words. These are words they have to learn by sight. No, most of those words, the phonics pattern can be taught, and they can actually learn how to sound out those words. And if you teach them just the phonics pattern, then they will be able to read way more words opposed to just teaching them to guess at words. And so that experience as a literacy coach is what put me on a journey of love for literacy, because I realized like, yes, like you don't have to guess because it was so much guesswork as a teacher for me. But now having the formula, I was like, we don't have to guess anymore. And we can actually teach teachers how to do the thing, how to teach kids how to read properly.
Nice. Yes. And I don't think like the science of, I don't know if it's because of the level I went into college with, as far as teaching 6th to 12th grade, but you saying the science of reading is my first time hearing the science of reading. Okay. Wow. To being honest. And I know there is a science, but I've never dived into it. I've never thought to do it. And because I was on a middle school, high school level, I didn't think I would need to do it because I thought they would get to me on a reading level. But my first year in my own classroom, I had a 7th grader reading on a kindergarten grade level. She could not read, and I didn't know what to do for her. They didn't put you in those type of situations in college. And during my time of subbing, I didn't dive into that type. Substituting is totally different than being in your own classroom. You're just giving work. You're giving work and not really grading it, not really assessing it. You're not really tracking anything. So it's totally different than being in your own classroom and being way more invested in those kids because you're seeing them on a regular, you're seeing them from the beginning to the end, whatever. My reading coach in middle school, and I love her dearly, but I feel like I was an assistant. I would feel like I was an assistant that had just accepted that our kids were not reading. And it was just like, okay, pass her. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with her? And she's like, pass her. She's like, what do you think holding her back is gonna do? And I'm like, shit, I don't know. It's like, what is this? I don't know. So I say all that to say, even as an English teacher, taking all my English stuff, and that's what I went to college for, to be a teacher, I never came across the science of reading. And you're saying that's the formula. And it is the formula. The teachers that are already in the school system, are they privy to that formula? Like, is that something? Because we don't go into, they don't, once you get into the school, they don't give you anything else really besides the books and the curriculum, pacing guides, all that stuff. But they don't really give you any more lessons besides, professional development. But that's not, that's more in the classroom management and all that good stuff. It's not teaching.
So I'm glad that you asked that question, because I joked with my husband and I said, I'm going to write a book and it's going to be titled, Our Kids Cannot Read and We Are All to Blame. And he was like,
oh, yes.
He said, you better not.
You better write it. Look.
No, he said, you better not. He said,
no, I'm telling you better. I'm saying you better.
So oftentimes our teacher, so recently I within the past year, I applied for a job with the state to be a teacher preparation reviewer. So basically look at teacher preparation programs and to be able to determine whether or not they are meeting the different standards that they're being asked to meet, and basically like multiple things, right? So like, are the different programs preparing teachers to be able to teach the science of reading? Are they preparing them to be able to teach a diverse set of kiddos? Are they preparing teachers to teach second language learners? And I remember going to the interview, and so they gave me some data. They told me to come up with everything that you would, that you would say to these folks. How would you rate them? Would you rate them proficient or not proficient? And it was like a scale. And then they say, and then tell us why and what your next steps would be. And so I remember telling them why. I remember giving them the scale, and I was like, yes. And they're like, so what were your next steps? And I was like, well, the next steps will be to, provide coaching. And they're like, well, you may get pushback. And I'm like, we're the state. What do you mean we may get pushback? The state, we set the targets and this is what you need. So why would we get pushback and why would we accept the pushback? And so what I realized is that there is an ongoing cycle, and the pushback would mean that it's coming from the districts, and you get pushback from school, from building leaders. So from an assistant principal point of view, I was like, okay, I'm receiving pushback from teachers, but to then learn that school building leaders push back on the district pushbacks on the state. And I said, so who's advocating for our kiddos? So if you have teacher preparation programs, and I've sat on many hiring committees where we have teachers come in and we ask them basic questions about what does a successful literacy block look like? First year teachers, second year teachers, veteran teachers, a lot of them do not know. So that means they come to us without having this knowledge. right?
Yes,
And when you look at the different, I follow a lot of groups, and they say like, "Oh, we didn't learn this in college," or there's even a group that's called "What I Should Have Learned About the Science of Reading in College." Like the truth of the matter is, our teachers are not being effectively prepared in their teacher curriculum program. They're paying all of this money, but they're not being prepared. And here's the thing. Remember, I kept talking to you about data, right? Have you ever heard of the National Assessment for Education Progress? Have you ever heard of that?
I don't think so.
So that is our nation's report card.
Okay.
Our nation's report card have shown historically, at least for the past 24 years, right? So we had, I think, No Child Left Behind. I think it came
2002.
Okay, thank you. So from 2002, so now we have like, okay, we have this national report card, we have these accountability systems. At least since 2004, only 34 to 36% of our fourth graders have been proficient readers. That means at least 65% over the last 20 years, at least 65% of our fourth graders have not been able to read on grade level. Then that data shows us that by the time they get to 8th grade and they take the assessment again and review for our nation's report card, that number has decreased. So that means that the gap continues to widen and widen and widen.
Yes.
And so the science, I remember hearing about this. Like I said, I remember hearing about the science of reading in 2021. And I believe that the first state that started to get it right was Mississippi. And our country was able to see like, oh, they're making strides and their kids, their literacy data is growing. And so little by little, very little by little, more states are starting to adopt the science of reading. But what you have is folks stick science of reading on a curriculum and then tell you that, oh, this is science of reading. This will help kids learn how to read. And that's just not the case. So, yeah.
Here we are. Here we are. I guess maybe I should stop because, I'm a analyst. Like I be trying to analyze things, especially education wise. And I've been blaming No Child Left Behind Act for a lot of things that maybe I shouldn't be blaming for because it sounds like we were already on this direction before No Child Left Behind Act was put in place. So maybe I'll stop blaming them. And I don't know, because you said we all the problem. And I like that. That. Are you writing a book? Look, are you writing a book? Because tell your husband I said you need to write a book.
I will. So I'm going to tell you why I say that we all are the problem, right? So the reason why I say that is because what I noticed is, like I said, from a teacher point of view, a lot of our teachers don't want coaching. And they refuse to coach it. And here's the thing, like we know a lot of teachers, you're in the classroom, you're overwhelmed. I remember being a teacher being overwhelmed, but I also remember wanting so badly for my kiddos to be proficient on their state test, right? To be proficient when they take their common assessment. And so even though I didn't like it, I still would work hard and take the feedback, especially from those who I saw were able to help me become a better teacher. Then you think about from a parent point of view. Oftentimes we talk about PTOs. PTO participation is low for different reasons, right? So a lot of times we have one parent households, which means they're unable to come to those meetings. There's a million excuses as to why our parents, and some are valid and some are not valid, right? But there are a million excuses as to why our parents are not showing up at board meetings and demanding more. I'm gonna be frank with you. A lot of our kids are coming to school and misbehaving like crazy. And then when you get on the phone and you call and say, hey, Sarah wasn't doing great. Sarah was being rude. She was bullying. She tore up my classroom. Well, what did you do? But what are we talking about? Let's come together and talk about this, right? And so you talk about like from an administrative point of view, our administrators, especially after COVID, they've gotten to the point where quite a few of them are just happy to have a body in the classroom. And listen, I get it, right? If you don't have teachers in a classroom, then you can't run your school. And so you talk about from a district point of view, right? So let me back up. So then our building, our school principals are allowing teachers to come in, to be, anybody, teachers to come in and be lazy, be rude, just not do what they're supposed to do. Some of them are a lot of them are not being kind to our kiddos. And then from the district point of view, it's like, okay, you have these principals that are in the buildings, they're not moving the needle. Why are they still there? Right? Why are they still there? And so then you go to the state level. In the state level, like I said, like hold them accountable. Like, what are you doing? And the truth of the matter is, like, I know so many people were like, they were, and me included, I was like, the Department of Education is shutting down. That is unacceptable. But the Department of Education has been around for a long time now.
I was about to say, Shamile, I think I was the only one that was like, I think we need to shut it down. I was the only one that was like,
I'm not saying that we need to shut it down, because let me just say this, you had the Fair and Appropriate Education Act. You had different acts that held our school districts accountable, especially for our kiddos who needed an IEP. If schools are not providing them with the services that they need, they are typically held accountable, and they would have to give these kids compensatory services. So I definitely think that the Department of Education helped in some ways, but overall our system is broken. And me and a few of my other colleagues, we were thinking yes, now that COVID is here, maybe some things will change. Maybe we would do some things different, and we did. And it's we just went back and re-assimilated. And so one of the things that I love about the idea of Homeschool Your Kids. Now, this is a true story. When my son was in kindergarten, because we're military, his first month of kindergarten, I homeschooled him. Now, even before I homeschooled him, he did go to preschool, and he went to a private preschool. When he was I think he was in daycare, I paid for him to start taking phonics. So I paid for him to start taking phonics classes when he was 3 years old. Then he went to a private pre-K 4, and then that first month I homeschooled him, because we had military orders, and we wasn't in Virginia yet. I would never forget. He get to school, they test him, and they say, "Oh, he did good. He scored at the end of a year benchmark." I said, "Okay, well, how what level is he on?" They said, "Oh, well, he scored at the end of year, so we didn't test him no further." So because he reached end of year benchmark at the beginning, you didn't think that you should find out what level he's on? So that was frustrating for me. So I ended up taking him out, putting him in another private school, one where his identity did not match the school, and we had a lot of problems because of it. Mm-hmm. And then I put him in another one. So then I put him in a Afrocentric private Christian school, and I ended up loving it. And they were super strict, but he learned and he continued to progress. Then I remember when he was in second grade, he kept coming home and saying "Mom, I just feel like oftentimes," and he would say these things. He would say, "I just feel like oftentimes I'm treated differently than the other kids. If I play a game, I get in trouble, but if the other kids play the same game, they don't get in trouble, and I have to sit out for recess." And the truth of the matter is that is happening a lot. We need to be mindful when we send our Black kids in predominantly white neighborhoods and think that everything is all well, especially for our Black.
It's a private school.
Yes,
yeah.
And this was a public school at the time.
Oh, this was a public. Okay.
So this was a public school. The private school, they end up picking up and moving to Tennessee, and we were still in Virginia. So, and I mean, the whole entire congregation, I was like, that's a powerful congregation. And they followed. They followed their pastor, and so. It worked for them. But this at the time was a second grade public school. And so I took him out, and like I said, like our Black boys, like they have energy. The status quo, the traditional school setting is not conducive for our babies to learn in. It's just the truth of the matter. Like their personalities are going to be suffocated. They're going to be treated as if they're, you know what I mean? Like, and so let me rewind. So he kept telling me that, and I remember I went in. And let me say this too. Which one was that? Because because we're military, we've been to a lot of schools. He was in one class, and I asked him to be switched to another class. And so they switched him to a Black teacher class, thinking like, okay, maybe she'll know how to deal with him. Well, again, first of all, just because it's a Black teacher doesn't mean that she's still following a set of social norms that she think is appropriate. And I remember having a meeting with her and just feeling like, you know what, this isn't going to work. And so we went to the adjacent school district, and that one was supposed to be like the best school district in the area. And I remember I got a job there, so I had to pay for him to go to this public school district. I got a job there, and I remember this was when I was a interventionist. So I was an interventionist for kindergarten through third grade for reading. And I remember I would go and I would pick up my different groups from different classrooms, and I would notice that there were always an island in these different classrooms. And unbeknownst to me, the island always only had our little Black boys on them. So I said, you mean to tell me that the only kids that's being bad are the Black ones? And so I will never forget, my son ran into my office, and he said, he was crying hysterically. And I was like, what's wrong? And he said, I overheard my teacher say to the librarian that that's the PALS teacher's son. He's awful. And I said, okay. I called his father. And I told his mom
to calm you down
that I need you to come pick him up. I want you to come pick him up. I'm at work and I have to be professional, so I can't leave. But I want you to come pick him up. So his dad came to pick him up. And I remember having a conversation with the principal, and she was indifferent, like, well, you know, like she didn't care. At the end of that conversation, when I told her, so I need to homeschool him. So my last day, I'm going to give you a 4-week notice so that you can figure out what you're going to do, because I don't want to just leave you high and dry. Then she's like, oh, well, what is it that we can do? And
then it got serious for her.
We can't do anything. I'm not going to subject my son to this. Right. And again, it was another predominantly white school where the truth of the matter is people are prejudiced. People are prejudiced. They have their preconceived notions, and oftentimes they're intolerant of other cultures. They're intolerant of the people. And I was just like, no. So those last 4 weeks of school I think it was actually last 8 weeks of school, because I think this happened in April and we would be out in June. I homeschooled him. And when I went back